You awaken, open your eyes, and make your first decision of the day to rise from bed. Later, you choose your coffee, a strong espresso, or perhaps a latte with alternative milk. You open your wardrobe and deliberately select clothes that will broadcast your mood, your status, your unique individuality to the world. On your way to work, you pull out your smartphone and begin to scroll through your news feed, pausing your gaze precisely on the publications that appear interesting to you. Every action, every movement, every thought is accompanied by an unwavering certainty. You are the absolute architect of your own life. Your hands grip the steering wheel. But what if this sensation of total control is merely the most ingenious hallucination ever crafted by evolution? Pause for a moment and behold this mundane morning ritual through the merciless lens of modern neurobiology and behavioral economics. Your decision to drink coffee was not dictated by independent volition. It was a physiological imperative of your brain, where adenosine levels had reached a critical threshold, demanding immediate receptor blockade to feign alertness. Your clothing choice? It was determined by an intricate, invisible matrix of social expectations, a subconscious fear of group rejection, and even micro fluctuations in body temperature, which your hypothalamus registered before your hand even touched the wardrobe door. And that endless scrolling of your screen, which you perceive as a search for information, is it truly an act of your free curiosity? Or perhaps it is merely a predictable dopamine system response to meticulously calibrated algorithms, tugging at the threads of your attention with the precision of a merciless puppeteer? We are accustomed to nurturing our ego, elevating it onto a pedestal of absolute autonomy. Yet, the true tableau of our existence is far grimmer and simultaneously infinitely more intricate. Envision an incredibly convoluted biological mechanism, a network of 100 billion neurons linked by trillions of synapses, relentlessly processing terabytes of data from the external environment. This mechanism is submerged in a chemical broth of hormones and neurotransmitters, its functioning rigidly programmed by millions of years of uncompromising natural selection, your unique genetic lottery, and the architecture of past traumatic experience. Are we not merely powerless passengers within this high-tech biological suit, naively believing that we ourselves set the course of the journey? Scientific experiments of recent decades involving neuroimaging reveal a chilling regularity. The brain makes decisions milliseconds, and sometimes even whole seconds, before that decision reaches the threshold of our consciousness. Yourself, that conscious entity with which you so firmly identify, is merely a belated observer. It receives the preordained outcome from subconscious computational centers and hastily fabricates a rational explanation for it. We do not create decisions. We merely register them and convince ourselves that we initiated them. This illusion of authorship is merely a cunning defense mechanism, an evolutionary trick designed to shield our psyche from the existential horror of realizing our own mechanistic nature. As we delve into the vast data on human nature, it becomes chillingly apparent how easily our so-called unique actions can be predicted. Invisible forces constantly gravitate over every single thought we have. The composition of our gut microbiome quietly dictates our food preferences and manipulates our susceptibility to anxiety. Subtle fluctuations in cortisol or oxytocin levels in our blood can redraw our political views, compelling us to support dictatorship or demand freedom, depending on the background stress level. Even the architecture of an urban environment, unnoticeable scents in a supermarket, or the color of walls in a room can fundamentally alter our moral judgments and financial decisions, all while we continue to cling to the belief in our own rationality. If the veil of romantic notions about free were brutally torn away, what would remain on the stage? What would remain is an incredibly complex, deterministic system, responding to stimuli with terrifying mathematical inevitability. Every emotion, every spark of inspiration, every act of social rebellion. These are merely consequences of preceding causes, a chain reaction of biochemistry and context set in motion long before our birth. The sensation of self-importance inevitably dissolves when one comprehends that what you proudly name your character is merely a specific configuration of neural circuits. What you deem your profound convictions is the result of a random collision of informational currents within your brain during moments of peak neuroplasticity. We stand on the precipice of the inevitable collapse of humanity's grandest myth. And to behold reality as it truly is, we must endure a painful process of deconstructing our own individuality, acknowledging one terrifying truth. The invisible driver of our consciousness never sought our consent on where the steering wheel would turn next. Is our so-called free will merely an intricate biochemical illusion, meticulously crafted to obscure nature's true motives? When we dissect human behavior through the cold lens of neurobiology, the humanist pathos crumbles before our very eyes. We tend to romanticize our suffering, our aspirations, and our triumphs, stubbornly refusing to acknowledge the stark truth. The organism is a closed ecosystem, governed by an unyielding chemical dictate. Within this system, there is no sanctuary for abstract happiness. Evolution never designed a state of permanent contentment, for a sated and tranquil creature loses its primal instinct for survival and becomes effortless prey. Let us now dissect the anatomy of desire. What is commonly known as motivation, drive, or ambition possesses a meticulously defined molecular formula. Its name, dopamine. Popular culture erroneously christened it the pleasure hormone, but this is a fundamental deception, twisting the very essence of our existence. Dopamine brings no peace. It ignites an insatiable hunger. It is the molecule of promise, a brutal instrument of conditioning, compelling the biological mechanism to relentlessly surge forward. When an obsession with a new idea takes hold, when it seems that the next achievement, a new position, a status symbol, or a romantic partner will forever alter existence, it is merely the brain's receptors reacting to a surge of a neurotransmitter. Nature wields this reward system as a lure. The moment the objective is attained, dopamine levels plummet, leaving behind only an echoing void and bitter disillusionment. Does this cycle not chillingly mirror the behavior of a classic addict, willing to sacrifice everything for the next dose? We are condemned to perpetual dissatisfaction, for it alone guarantees that the organism will continue to relentlessly scan its environment for resources. Our own brain acts as a merciless dealer, constantly raising the stakes and forcing us to run on the endless wheel of illusory progress. And what of our profound hunger for recognition, pride, self-respect, a sense of personal worth and justice? Are these lofty concepts not merely byproducts of serotonin's insidious influence? This ancient substance, which governed the behavior of primitive crustaceans millions of years ago, still dictates our position within the social hierarchy today. Evolution demanded a rigid pack structure where each individual knew their rank implicitly. Those who clawed their way to the apex of the pyramid claimed the finest sustenance and the exclusive right to propagate their genes. The modern world has drastically altered the stage. We have erected metropolises and forged complex economic models, yet the fundamental chemical algorithm remains chillingly unchanged. When society approves of our actions, the brain rewards us with a slow, insidious release of serotonin. We experience a fleeting semblance of calm, a fabricated grandeur, and a brittle confidence in tomorrow, but the slightest perceived threat to our social standing, and this chemical faucet is instantly sealed off. Anxiety, self-doubt, and the crushing weight of depression descend. Grim warnings from the organism that its position within the pack is weakening, and its chances of survival are plummeting. Do we truly consciously forge our moral principles, or are we merely frantically evading serotonin starvation, conforming to the brutal demands of an aggressive society? Humanity's most hallowed and untouchable illusion remains love. It is widely regarded as the ultimate expression of consciousness, a transcendent emotion reaching beyond the physical realm. Yet within the sterile confines of the evolutionary biology lab, this phenomenon is dissected solely through the prism of oxytocin and vasopressin. These neuropeptides forge profound attachment, compelling a mother to risk her life to shield her offspring, and partners to cling together just long enough to ensure the survival of shared genes. This is not the poetry of the cosmos. It is a ruthless contract for DNA replication, sealed with a chemical mark. Furthermore, this algorithm possesses a dark, destructive facet. By reinforcing neural bonds within a defined group, oxytocin simultaneously provokes the most virulent aggression and xenophobia towards all outsiders. Is the fiercest devotion to one's family, nation, or religious group nothing more than a biological failsafe, instantly transforming us into merciless enemies of the rest of the world? The most tender affection for one's child and the most brutal hatred for the outsider are fueled by the very same chemical source. Oxytocin does not make us benevolent. It makes us expedient for our pack. All our brightest impulses, grandiose schemes, political convictions, and profound familial bonds are merely an intricate dance of neural networks striving to adapt to their environment. We function as perfectly tuned biological machines, our daily actions subtly orchestrated by an internal pharmacological factory. The evolutionary process possesses neither morality nor compassion. It remains utterly indifferent to human concepts of good and evil, freedom or justice. Its sole, blind objective is the relentless transmission of genetic code to the next generation. And to compel us to fulfill this mission, nature has forged us into perfect hostages of our own sensations. We stubbornly seek profound meaning in philosophical treatises or religious revelations, refusing to perceive that its true essence lies concealed within microscopic synaptic clefts. Each of us opens our eyes daily, solely to service our chemical receptors. We wear our bodies down in toil for a fleeting surge of dopaminergic anticipation, compromise our conscience to preserve our serotonergic status in society, and are prepared to annihilate our own kind for the illusion of oxytocinergic unity with our tribe. It is a flawlessly constructed mechanism of total control, from which no rebellion can ever rise, for the jailer and the prisoner are one and the same. Our consciousness is merely a vibrant screen, upon which the illusion of choice is ceaselessly broadcast for our own pacification. Biochemical engineers, possessing exclusive access to the control panel of our consciousness via the vagus nerve. This nerve acts as a high-speed fiber optic cable, transmitting millions of signals directly from the gastrointestinal tract to the brain's core structures. Nearly 90% of serotonin, the neurotransmitter governing our emotional state and sense of happiness, is synthesized precisely there in the gut's darkness under bacterial dominion. When an unbearable, almost bestial craving for sweets arises, whose need is it truly? Scientific data indicates that specific microbial strains can produce peptides mimicking our own hunger hormones. They literally compel our neural networks to demand the sugar essential for these colonies' rapid proliferation, lavishly rewarding the brain with microdoses of dopamine for its obedience. Should we attempt a radical dietary change, depriving them of sustenance, these bacteria will begin to die en masse, releasing toxins into the bloodstream. These substances provoke irritation, profound apathy, and baseless anxiety within us. Are we not hostages to this microscopic tyranny, where every culinary choice is merely the subservient execution of an order encoded in the chemical signals of strangers? Yet, microbiome manipulation is but a foundational layer of control loss. A far deeper, existential dread lurks in the ability of more complex parasites to rewrite the very architecture of our behavior. One of the most chilling examples of such biological hacking is Toxoplasma gondii, a microscopic parasite whose evolutionary life cycle is inextricably linked to the feline family. To reach the intestines of its definitive host, the parasite infects intermediate carriers, such as rodents. Once inside a mouse's brain, it performs a delicate neurosurgical operation, selectively deactivating the amygdala's instinctive fear of cat urine. More chillingly, it inverts this terror, transforming it into a fatal sexual attraction. The zombified rodent actively seeks out its predator, willingly marching to its death for the continuation of the alien cycle. Can we truly be so self-assured as to believe our species has escaped a similar fate? Modern neurobiology indicates that billions of people worldwide are carriers of a latent form of toxoplasmosis. While evolutionarily we are not part of the feline daily diet, Toxoplasma cysts lie dormant for decades within our brain tissues. They don't simply lie inert. They actively interfere with neurotransmitter metabolism, artificially elevating dopamine levels and manipulating testosterone. The statistics, supported by extensive research, are terrifying. Infected individuals demonstrate a significantly higher propensity for unjustified risk, are involved in fatal traffic accidents. Their reactions are pathologically altered, and levels of uncontrolled aggression rapidly escalate. Some scientific papers even find direct correlations between the presence of this parasite and the development of schizophrenia. Are those sudden bursts of rage, urges toward extreme sports, or self-destructive behaviors merely manifestations of an alien will pulsing within our very synapses? We construct complex philosophical concepts of our own exceptionalism, codify ethical laws, and forge global civilizations. Yet at a cellular level, reality resembles a flawless biological horror scenario. Our nervous system, our most intimate desires, our deepest fears, all our vulnerable code, constantly being exploited. The organism we so confidently call ours in fact functions as a colossal, warm, resource-rich vessel. It is a biological biosuit, perfectly engineered by blind evolution purely to transport trillions of other beings through space and time. They are born, wage brutal chemical wars for territory, reproduce, and die within us, utterly oblivious to the existence of an external world, just as we prefer not to contemplate their invisible empire. Our vaunted consciousness in this system of coordinates becomes merely a byproduct, a convenient illusion of autonomy, allowing this fleshy shell to evade danger and continuously supply sustenance to its true masters. Peering into the very depths of our own minds in search of a pure, undivided essence, we confront a cold void from whose darkness billions of alien eyes stare back. Every one of your movements, every thought, every decision you believe is uniquely your own, is in truth the cold, biochemical echo of a calculation made long before you ever became aware of it. We cling to the intricate architecture of our minds, where consciousness confidently presides at the control panel, pulling levers and charting a course through countless possibilities. Yet, neuroscience, with ruthless precision, shatters this comforting myth, revealing it as the grandest illusion evolution ever engineered for our very survival. In the 80s of the last century, researcher Benjamin Libet conducted an experiment that became the point of no return for the concept of free will. His laboratory was no torture chamber. It was there that the human ego suffered its most devastating blow. Subjects sat before a specialized dial, instructed to perform a simple action, to flick their wrist whenever they felt the urge. An electroencephalogram ceaselessly recorded their brain activity. Sensors on their arms registered the precise moment of muscle contraction, and the participants themselves noted the exact time their conscious intention to act emerged. The results were terrifying in their mathematical impartiality. Instruments registered a specific burst of neural activity, the so-called readiness potential, approximately 300 to 500 milliseconds before the individual consciously recognized their desire to move their hand. The brain independently initiated the action's preparation, launching complex motor protocols, and only then dispatched a brief message of intent to consciousness. Are we not merely helpless spectators in a theater, naively convinced our thoughts can alter the plot of a film already shot and projected onto the screen. Yet, Libet's experiment was merely the first ominous whisper. Modern functional magnetic resonance imaging technologies have allowed us to peer even deeper into the dark matter of our neural networks. Research conducted by John Dylan Haynes' team at the Max Planck Institute pushed this delay to proportions that evoke true existential dread. By scanning the frontopolar cortex, scientists learned to predict with chilling accuracy which button, right or left, a person would press a full 7, and sometimes even 10 seconds before the subject made their free choice. 10 seconds. In the measurements of microbiology, that is an eternity. Your brain has already made the decision. It has already activated the corresponding synaptic circuits, while you don't even suspect a dilemma exists. What, then, is our vaunted consciousness, if not the epicenter of decision-making? Science offers a brutal answer. It is merely the press office, the highly paid PR department of our biological enterprise. Its primary function is not to command processes, but to retroactively justify actions already irrevocably executed by silent autopilot. When unconscious mechanisms react to stimuli, generate emotions, and trigger behavioral responses, consciousness instantly fabricates a logical narrative. It convinces the organism that it initiated the process. This is a flawless mechanism of self-deception, preventing the paralyzing realization of our own inherent mechanistic nature. Let us examine this process under the microscope of daily existence. You swerve abruptly on the highway, purchase something you never intended to buy, or utter an offensive word during a conflict. Your PR department immediately fabricates a rationalization. I panicked because of an obstacle. I've needed this item for ages. The other person provoked me. In reality, complex algorithms of the dopamine system, shadowy past experiences, current hormone levels, and microscopic neurotransmitter fluctuations had already entered the fray. The decision was forged in the dark depths of the basal ganglia, reduced to a singular vector, and executed. Your so-called self merely received a press release about the accomplished event and proudly affixed its signature. Consciousness is always, inevitably, an afterthought. It resembles a passenger jolted awake in the back seat of a car, hurtling wildly down a night highway. This passenger stares at the empty driver's seat, grips a plastic toy steering wheel attached to the seat back, and with absolute solemnity believes they are keeping the vehicle on the road. The illusion of control is so flawless, humanity is prepared to defend it to its dying breath, rejecting the cold, hard data from the scanners. But objective reality remains immutable. The script of your every action is penned in utter darkness, beyond the gaze of yourself, long before you ever conceive it as your own idea. Absolute darkness. No ray of light, no sound, no touch of wind has ever penetrated this stifling bone capsule. 3 pounds of moist biological tissue, imprisoned within the impenetrable vault of your skull, compelled to ceaselessly hallucinate reality, relying solely on a torrent of blind electrical impulses. What you now perceive as yourself has never directly touched the world around you. Consciousness is not a captain firmly gripping the helm of your life. Does it not rather resemble a helpless passenger, lashed to a seat in the darkened cinema of the brain, shown a film edited by evolution? You gaze into the mirror and behold a unified personality, yet beneath the cranial vault, a fragmented parliament of competing neural networks truly functions. Decisions are forged in the brutal chemical warfare within the darkness of the limbic system, and your conscious self is merely handed a post-factum press release, offering a logical justification for a choice you never actually made. If one embraces this terrifying paradigm, where we're nothing more than complex biological algorithms interpreting DNA code, the familiar tapestry of the world begins to unravel before your eyes. We are accustomed to sacralizing our own feelings, elevating them to the divine. But what remains of love's grandeur when we dissect it with the scalpel of neurobiology? Is this cherished romance anything more than a simple evolutionary lure? a cunning algorithmic trick of nature? When you feel the all-consuming warmth of affection or the readiness to die for another, is it not merely the effect of a cocktail of oxytocin, dopamine, and vasopressin, masterfully synthesized to compel two biological entities to overlook each other's flaws just long enough for the successful transmission of genetic material? Our grandest poems and most dramatic self-sacrifices may prove to be nothing more than echoes of an ancient, blind imperative for survival, deceiving us by granting chemical reactions the illusion of profound meaning. But the true existential tension peaks when we dare to gaze into the abyss of determinism. Every thought you harbor, every impulse that seemed entirely conscious, was forged long before it flickered across the screen of your awareness. The glucose level in your blood this very second, the epigenetic markers etched by the psychological traumas of your ancestors, the architecture of neural connections sculpted by the arbitrary environment of your childhood. These are the true, invisible puppeteers of your behavior. If every step we take is merely a mathematically inevitable consequence of a chain of cause and effect stretching back to the genesis of the universe itself, then what are our moral coordinates? What is guilt in a world where no individual chose their genes, nor their neurochemical balance, nor the conditions of their formation? What is crime when it is merely a fatal, predetermined malfunction within the mechanism? We condemn the murderer, branding them as absolute evil. Yet are we not merely witnessing society punishing an organism for a tragic convergence of a mutated MAOA gene, early childhood abuse, and a random surge of testosterone on a specific evening? The very concept of sin and moral responsibility dissolves within solutions of neurotransmitters, leaving us face to face with a chilling void. If the perpetrator was physically incapable of acting otherwise, the entire monumental edifice of our justice system, all our notions of good and evil, transmute into a convenient social illusion, necessary only to stave off chaos. Try to trace the precise origin of your next thought. You cannot. It merely surfaces from the darkness of the subconscious, like a spar from a faulty wire, without your permission. You do not choose your desires. You cannot will yourself not to desire. With each dawning realization of this fact, the sensation of your own subjectivity shrinks to the dimensions of a cramped, claustrophobic cell. Your own body transforms into a biological suit, piloted by a blind confluence of genetic code and external stimuli. The mind begins to suffocate under the weight of its own secondary nature. There is no ghost in the machine, only the machine itself, forged from flesh, blood, and electricity. We are hostages to our own physiology, condemned to play roles in a drama whose script was penned by chemistry long before our birth, compelled to believe that every line is our own, free choice. Imagine the moment when a fundamental illusion shatters into splinters. The realization that every step we take, every pulsating thought, every so-called fateful decision, is merely the inevitable consequence of a blind chain of neurochemical reactions, ignited even before our birth, can feel like a true existential horror. Are we not simply biological algorithms, confined within a bony prison, doomed to play out a script pre-written by genetics and environment? The cold, impersonal void of determinism is capable of crushing an unprepared mind. Yet, it is at this very point of absolute fatalism, at the deepest abyss of our conceptual despair, that the greatest paradox of human nature lies hidden. Feel the multi-ton burden lift from your shoulders. If free will, in that romantic, magical sense, does not exist, then along with it evaporates the most toxic, the cruelest construct of our psyche, guilt. The endless self-devouring over past mistakes, the paralyzing gnawing for lost opportunities, the destructive shame for our own weaknesses, all of it suddenly loses any logical foundation. You acted in the only possible way, strictly dictated by the configuration of your synapses, the balance of neurotransmitters, and the environmental context in that precise millisecond of time. This is not an indulgence for irresponsibility. It is a profound, scientifically justified absolution. It is an intellectual catharsis delivered by the cold, ruthless anatomy of our behavior. We are indeed machines, machines of flesh, blood, hormones, and electrical impulses. But does the realization of this fact render us helpless? On the contrary, it places in our hands what humanity has been deprived of for millennia, a detailed instruction manual. The illusion of absolute control forces us to battle consequences, draining our resources in a futile war against our own nature. Instead, understanding the mechanics allows us to rewrite the very code. If our behavior is totally determined by input data, we automatically gain the ability to become the architects of that data. This is no longer esoteric philosophy or popular psychology. It is the stark applied engineering of one's own life. Once the crystal clear understanding dawns that willpower is merely a critically limited resource of the prefrontal cortex, dependent on blood glucose levels, circadian rhythms, and the quality of deep sleep, we cease our futile struggle against windmills. We begin to ruthlessly hack the system. Does the gut microbiome directly dictate our emotional state via the vagus nerve? We alter the fuel we consume, transforming food into an instrument of neurocorrection. Does chronic stress atrophy the hippocampus and block our capacity for adaptation? We reprogram the cortisol, axis response through targeted physical exertion and stringent control of informational noise. Does the environment, unbeknownst to us, unleash automatic triggers of destructive behavior? We construct the space around us with such mathematical precision that the correct actions become absolutely inevitable and destructive ones physically impossible. This is the art of crafting a closed ecosystem where your brain is simply predestined to make decisions advantageous to you. Every neural network within your skull possesses neuroplasticity. Every lived experience, every absorbed mental model leaves an irreversible physical imprint on the brain's microarchitecture. We are not able to violate the fundamental laws of physics or repeal evolutionary biology, but we are capable of filling this deterministic mechanism with new, qualitative variables. Instead of remaining a blind passenger on a freight train of your own subconscious, hurtling towards an abyss, you can force your way into the conductor's cabin and begin methodically flipping the switches on the control panel. The synthesis of knowledge from hundreds of scientific papers unveils an astonishing tapestry before us. We meticulously dissect the dopamine system of motivation, decipher the algorithms of fear embedded within the amygdala, and study the patterns of the brain's default mode network. This path demands uncompromising intellectual audacity to relinquish the sweet fables of magical thinking and look directly into the harsh reality of our biological limits. This is the only true step towards total liberation. Are you prepared to cross this invisible threshold? To cease being a mere passive observer, relentlessly carried by the current of neurochemical cascades and evolutionary flaws. It is time to scrutinize your own code at the deepest level. Subscribe to continue this intellectual expedition into the darkest, yet most captivating labyrinths of our brain. Together, we shall dissect the algorithms that secretly govern our fears, hidden desires, and daily actions. Gain complete access to the keys of your own system. Become not merely a puppet, obediently and blindly dancing to the rhythms of brutal evolution, but the sole architect who consciously and confidently pulls the strings.